Now we're going to create a window on the wall over on the left using the Boolean modeler. And I'll need another polygon cube with which to punch a hole in that. The easiest way to do that would be to select the wall, and I'll go to the orthographic view where I'm looking directly at the wall. I'll hit 4 on the keyboard so I can see the wireframe. And if I were to hit Command D and then use my scale to which is R, I can click and drag, and now I can see I'm getting a duplicate, and I'm able to scale it down to a size I might want. I'll leave it about there. Now if I were to return to my perspective view and hit F on the keyboard to zoom in on that selected wall, and hit 4 in the perspective view, I can see I've got that embedded inside of it. Now in order to punch a hole through the thickness of the wall, this box, this other polygon, needs to be much thicker, needs to go out on either side. So I'll hit R on the keyboard and I'll just pull on the right axis, which happens to be the Z axis here, and I want to make sure that it goes through either side. I'll hit 5 so I can see it in gray form to confirm that. Now we're also going to be making a window frame to fit in there. So rather than have to reconstruct a brand new cube, once again, I'll hit Command D and I'll hit W on the keyboard and I'll pull that one out like so, and I'll save. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use the one that's still embedded in the wall to punch a hole in it. To do so, I'll select the wall, Shift select the embedded polygon cube, holding down the space bar. I'm going to go to Mesh, Booleans, and then A-B. Now what you're going to see is a proxy brown outline of what subtracted the part from the wall, and I have no need for that at this point, so in my upper left hand corner I'll click on my history button to delete the history that has. Now the wall is permanently got a hole in it. Next we'll create the window frame. Now in order to make it a little easier to view in the viewport, I'm going to select the two walls and the floor, and I'll go to my channel box on the right hand side, and in the channel box there is a layer window. We have the option to click on the term layers and choose create layer from selected. And what this will allow me to do now is if I click on that V, it's going to hide the geometry that we put there, giving us access to the whole perspective viewport to manipulate our geometry. Now we're going to use the Boolean model once again to create a shape of 6 polygon cubes to punch holes in what will be our window frame. I'm going to go to the orthographic view where I'm looking directly at my geometry. I'll select it and I'll hit F on the keyboard. I'll zoom back a little bit to get a little room around the perimeter. I held the Option key and I use my right mouse dragging up and down to do so. I'll hit 4 for wireframe. When I hit Command D and then hit R to get my scale tool, I can click and drag and reduce the size of that. Now it's pretty subjective what you want your windows to look like, as long as we put roughly 6 in there. So I'll start by putting in something like that. I'll hit Command D to duplicate and I'll put one here. I'll hit Command D and I'll duplicate that again. And you can see it's kind of going off the edge of the one below, but once we have 6 the way we want, we will make them into one polygon surface and then scale it to fit what will ultimately be that window frame. So with these 3 made, I'll Shift Select. I'll hit Command D once again and I'll pull those down roughly here. And now I'm going to return to my perspective view. Hitting F on the keyboard, I can get closer to what I have now. I'll hit 4 so I can see the wireframe. Now, what we need to do now is we need to Shift Select those newly made smaller polygon cubes. And once I've done that, I'm going to hold down the space bar. I'll return to Mesh, Booleans, and I'm going to choose Union. And it's going to make that union makes it into one piece of geometry, which means now I'm free to scale that to fit inside the one that will ultimately be our window frame. Now, once I've moved, you can see there's that proxy series of brown lines. We don't need that in this instance either, so I'll click on Delete by Type History. Now I need to do two things. First, I'm going to select which will ultimately be our window frame. I'll make it thinner because it would be. And then I'm going to select the 6 configuration. I'll center the pivot, clicking on the center pivot button, and I'll just make those thicker. Now my objective is to put these inside the window frame so I can edit it out. I'll go to my orthographic views to begin with. I'll go to the view where I'm looking directly straight on, hitting W on the keyboard. I'll move it down a little bit, and I'll start to use my move and scale tool W and R to make that fit perhaps the way I would like it to. And again, this is very subjective what your outcome is. So if I was to return my perspective view now, I can see that I'm ready now to put this inside, which will be ultimately our window frame. I'll hit 5 on the keyboard, and we can see something like this. Now the next thing is I want to punch a hole in what will be our window frame. Just a thing to note that when we use the Boolean modeler, we have to use polygon to polygon. We are limited to one piece of geometry, subtracting or adding to another one at a time. That's why we made a union of the 6. So I'll start by selecting what I want to keep. The window frame itself, I'll shift select the configuration of 6. Holding down my space bar, I'll go to Mesh, Boolean, and Difference. And there's my window frame. Now again, I'll click on Delete by Type History, and I'll save. Now I'll return to my channel box. I'll turn on the walls and floor. Going to the top view with the window frame selected, I can hold down V, and you'll see that what was a square blue box turns into a circle. And that means I can snap this to the wall, and I'll save. Now we're going to create a door on the opposite wall using the same technique. I'll select the wall, and going to my orthographic views, I'll hit A on the keyboard to fit, or F, and I'll zoom back a little. I'll hit 4 for the wireframe, and I want a duplicate of that. Rather than create another cube and size it down, we can hit Command D as we did with the window, R on the keyboard for the scale, and I'll start to tweak this to the shape of a door I might want. And when I return to my perspective view, and I hit 4 on the keyboard, and then F, I can see that door shape embedded inside the wall. Now, just as we did with the window, I want that to be thicker than the wall surface itself, so I will hit R for the scale tool, and on my Z-axis, I'll make it wider or thicker. And as we did with the window, I want a door that will fit in that opening afterwards. So rather than create a new polygon cube, I'll hit Command D once again, hit W, and I'll pull that shape out into the middle of the room. Next, we'll select our wall, and we'll shift select the polygon cube, which will subtract it and give us the opening. You'll notice that when you select certain things, the last object in a selection will be green, and that's what we want in this instance when we go to Mesh A-B. Holding down my space bar, I'll go to Mesh, Booleans, Difference, A-B. I'll delete by type history, and I'll hit 5 on my keyboard. I'll select what will be our door, place it back into the opening. I'll make it a little bit thinner now, and when we get to our textures, we'll put a door pattern on that.